You ever look at your life one morning and realize you're living in someone else's story? That's how it started for me. Tuesday morning, just before work, I caught myself staring at my own reflection in the mirror. Same tired face, same half-assed shave, but something felt off. Like the house was quieter than usual, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. More like the calm right before everything falls apart. I'm Mark, 38, father of two, husband for nearly 14 years, and I thought my life was as average as it gets. Decent job in IT, a cozy house in the suburbs, and a wife who I genuinely believed was still my best friend. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. Bills were paid, kids were happy, and my biggest concern until a few weeks ago was whether we'd take our next family trip to the beach or the mountains. Her name's Claire, my wife. 36, smart, sarcastic, beautiful in that girl next door kind of way that never really fades. She was always the one with the plans, the lists, the goals. I was the one who made sure the trash got out and the car was serviced. It worked, or so I thought. See, we weren't fighting. Not really. No screaming matches, no dramatic cold shoulders. Just little things. A change in her tone when she talked to me. More nights with her face glued to her phone. A drop in affection that I first chalked up to stress. People drift sometimes, right? I figured it was a phase. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe I needed to try harder. Be more attentive. Be more helpful. So I did. I made dinner more often. I did school runs without being asked. I complimented her more. Planned a date night, which she ended up canceling last minute. Said she had a headache and work emails piling up. I let it slide. She used to be all over me, even on my worst days. That night, she barely touched her food. Still, I pushed it down. Ignored it. Because the alternative was scarier than I was ready to admit. The idea that Claire, the woman who held my hand when my dad passed, who cheered me on through job changes, who cried when we brought our son home from the hospital, might be hiding something from me? That was a door I didn't want to open. Not yet. Then there was her new friend group. Some colleagues from work, mostly women, but one guy, Eli, kept popping up in conversations. Always casually mentioned. Eli said this, or Eli helped me with that. At first, it didn't register. She worked in marketing, so collaboration was part of the gig. But then I noticed she started dressing a little differently on days she was going in for meetings. Subtler makeup, tighter jeans. Not over the top. Just enough to make me notice. I remember the first time the thought crossed my mind. It was a Saturday afternoon. She was in the kitchen on her phone, laughing softly at something she refused to share. I asked, "What's so funny?" She looked up, startled like she forgot I was there, and said, "Oh, just work stuff," then changed the subject. Something about that moment felt wrong, like I had caught a glimpse of something I wasn't supposed to see. The thing is, I wasn't looking for problems. I was looking for reassurance. I wanted her to give me a reason to believe I was overthinking it. But every time I reached for closeness, she pulled back just enough to make me feel stupid for trying. One night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there next to her, listening to her soft breathing, and I just stared at the ceiling. My thoughts were a storm. Was she cheating? Was I just paranoid? Was I not enough anymore? The next day, I started paying attention more closely, not out of jealousy, but out of fear. That was the start of it. The start of the silence between us growing louder than any argument we'd ever had. And deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it yet. I guess that's the funny thing about betrayal. You feel it before you know it. The heart figures it out way before the head does. And me? I was about to find out the truth in a way I never expected. The weird thing is, it didn't happen how I thought it would. I always imagined that if my wife ever cheated, it would be some big, dramatic reveal. I'd catch her in the act, or find some explicit message on her phone, or overhear a phone call that would make everything click. But what actually happened was slower, more ordinary, and somehow that made it worse. It started with her laptop, which she usually kept to herself. Claire was protective of her devices, even with me, always brushing off my offers to fix things or update something with a quick, "I got it." I didn't think much of it at the time, just figured it was her way of keeping work separate from home. But that night, about 2 weeks after I started noticing the change in her, she left it open on the couch while she went to take a shower. It was nothing huge, just a browser tab open on a conversation she forgot to close, not even minimized. I wasn't trying to snoop. I swear I wasn't. I was actually about to close the lid and put it on the charger like I usually do when I noticed the name Eli at the top of the chat window. Not Eli from work, Just Eli. No last name. No professional tone. And the last message caught my attention. Still thinking about last night. That was it. No emojis. No context. Just that sentence sitting there, glowing back at me in the dim light. I sat there for a few seconds, heart doing something weird that didn't feel like fear or anger, just pressure. I stared at the screen, then looked toward the hallway, listening to the water running in the shower, trying to decide what the hell to do. I clicked the message thread. It was a dumb decision, I know that, but I did it anyway. The conversation wasn't long, maybe a dozen messages total, and most of them were vague. Not enough to be concrete proof, but enough to make me feel sick. I wish I could see you again tonight. Yesterday was amazing. You make me feel alive again. Let's not talk about reality, just us. Nothing about work. Nothing that could be passed off as professional. This wasn't about a campaign or a client presentation. This was about them. I didn't scroll back any further. I just closed the window, set the laptop back on the table, and sat there like a fucking statue until she came back into the room. She was wearing her robe and towel drying her hair, humming something under her breath like nothing was wrong. I looked at her face, the one I used to love waking up next to, and wondered if she would even tell me if I asked. Would she lie? Would she gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things? Would she flip it around and say I was invading her privacy? I didn't know, and the fact that I couldn't predict her anymore was worse than anything else. I told her I was going for a walk, didn't wait for her response, and left. It was already past 10, but I just walked. No destination, no plan, just steps. I ended up sitting at a 24-hour diner, not because I was hungry, but because I needed a place to sit that wasn't my house. I ordered coffee and didn't drink it. I stared at the tiled floor and tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that it was just a flirtation, a crush, a stupid emotional detour that hadn't gone anywhere yet. But deep down I knew that wasn't true. You don't call something amazing if it hasn't happened. You don't say last night, unless there was a night worth remembering. When I got home, she was asleep, or pretending to be. I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her. I wanted to shake her awake and make her confess, make her say it out loud so I didn't have to carry this secret by myself anymore. But I didn't. I got into bed and turned away from her, and I lay there until morning without closing my eyes once. The next day, I called in sick to work. I told them I had a stomach bug, which was technically true if you counted the emotional kind. Claire left for the office like usual, kissed me on the forehead like we were still married in the way that mattered, and walked out the door without a second glance. I watched her drive off from the kitchen window, then sat at the table trying to piece together the timeline. When had it started? How long had it been going on? What was she getting from him that I hadn't given her? That part hurt the most, thinking that maybe I'd become invisible to her without realizing it. I tried to go through our last few months in my head, picking out clues, moments that could have been lies in disguise. There were plenty, once I looked for them. But the worst thing wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how easily she pulled it off. The ease with which she smiled, the routine she never broke, the way she still folded my laundry and left little notes reminding me to pick up milk. That normalcy, that ability to lie while acting like everything was fine, that's what cut deepest. And even though I hadn't confronted her yet, even though I had no proof beyond those messages in my gut, I knew one thing for sure. She had cheated, and there was no going back. I waited 4 days before saying a word. 4 days of pretending I didn't know, of nodding and smiling and keeping my mouth shut while I watched her move around the house like nothing had changed. She made dinner, folded laundry, called her mom to complain about her job, and scrolled through her phone while we watched a show neither of us was really paying attention to. I think I was waiting for the perfect moment to bring it up, but there's never a good time to destroy someone's lie, and honestly, I just couldn't carry it any longer. That morning, she sat at the table, eating yogurt and checking emails, and I stood by the coffee machine, staring at her like she was a stranger in my house. She didn't even look up. Who's Eli? Her spoon paused in midair, but she didn't flinch. She set it down slowly, wiped her mouth with the napkin like I'd just asked her about a friend from college, and finally met my eyes. What? I didn't repeat myself. I just stood there, watching her process the question. I saw the exact moment she realized she couldn't lie her way out of it. She lowered her gaze and sighed, and that was the answer. No denial, no outrage, no shock. Just a quiet sigh like she'd been waiting for this. How long? I asked. She rubbed her temples like she had a headache. It's not what you think. It never is, I said. So tell me. She stood up, pushed the chair back a little too hard, and crossed her arms like she was preparing for a fight. It wasn't planned, Mark. I didn't go looking for anything. It just happened. That sentence hit me harder than if she'd said she loved him. I hate that phrase. I've heard it in movies and stories and always thought it was a lazy excuse for people who didn't want to take responsibility for their choices. She saw the look on my face and kept talking, probably trying to get ahead of the next blow. We started talking more at work. We had a lot in common, and I guess we just clicked. I didn't mean for anything to happen, but it did. Once. That's it. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe how calm she was. Once. Just once, huh? She nodded, like that was supposed to soften the blow. It was a mistake. I regretted it immediately. It didn't mean anything. We haven't done anything since. And the messages? I asked. All the sweet little texts, the ones about how amazing last night was. She hesitated, then said, I didn't delete those because I forgot. I wasn't trying to keep anything from you. You just what? Wanted to hang on to the memory. Her face tightened. That's not fair. No, Claire, I said, stepping closer. What's not fair is sleeping with someone else, and then coming home to kiss your husband like everything's fine. What's not fair is making me feel like I was the crazy one for noticing something was off. What's not fair is how you've been lying to my face every single day and still looking me in the eye like I'm supposed to believe you. She shook her head. You don't understand what it's been like. You've been distant for months, Mark. You stopped asking about my day. You never touched me anymore, and everything felt cold. I felt like I was living with a roommate, not a husband. I didn't even try to argue that point. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had pulled away. But I didn't cheat. I didn't cross that line. And I didn't rewrite the rules of our marriage just because things got hard. You could have talked to me, I said, trying to keep my voice level. You could have told me you were unhappy. You could have said you needed more from me. Instead, you ran to some guy from work like that was the solution. I didn't plan to fall into bed with him, she snapped. It was one time. We were drinking after work, things got out of hand, and I felt like someone saw me again. It was stupid, I know that. But it happened, and I can't undo it. I stood there, staring at her, trying to figure out who this woman was. This wasn't the person I married. Or maybe it was, and I just didn't want to admit it. The silence between us stretched until it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Do you love him? I finally asked. She looked away. No, it wasn't about that. Do you want to keep seeing him? No, she said quickly. It's over. We agreed it couldn't go anywhere. I nodded slowly, trying to hold on to something. Anger, sadness, anything that would help me figure out what came next. But everything felt numb. I walked past her, into the hallway, and stood there for a second before turning back around. I need time, I said. Don't talk to me unless it's about the kids or something urgent. I can't look at you right now. Mark, please. I'm serious, Claire. You crossed a line, and I don't know if there's any coming back from it. So just give me space. She didn't follow me. She didn't cry or beg. She just stood there, arms still crossed, and let me walk away. That was the moment I realized the marriage wasn't just cracked. It was broken, and I wasn't sure I wanted to fix it. The next morning, I didn't speak a word to her. She offered to make coffee like she usually did, and I just waved it off without looking up from the table. She left for work like nothing had happened, like we didn't just rip each other apart the night before, and I knew right then she thought we'd just ride this out and get past it. That's when I decided I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to be the husband who quietly forgave the affair and spent the next 10 years wondering if it would happen again. If she could so easily cross the line and lie about it, she could damn well live with the consequences too. So I made a plan, and I didn't tell anyone about it, not even my closest friend. First thing I did was copy everything from her laptop. I waited until she went out to grab groceries that weekend and used that time to make backups of the chat history, saved screenshots, pulled her emails, and even found a folder buried in her cloud drive filled with pictures I hadn't seen before. Nothing pornographic, just little selfies she'd taken at her desk or in her car, dressed nice, smiling in ways she hadn't smiled at me in a long time. Most were sent to him. I labeled the folder Claire, Reality, and made a copy on a flash drive I kept taped under my desk drawer. Not for blackmail, not for leverage, just to remind myself later, when she'd try to twist the story, what the truth actually looked like. I changed all the passwords to our joint accounts that same night. Bank, credit cards, savings, everything. I opened a new account in my name and moved half the money into it. I wasn't going to drain her, but I wasn't about to get blindsided either if she suddenly decided to lawyer up. Next, I called my buddy Dan, who owns a moving company, and asked if he had a team that could help me out discreetly. I told him I'd pay cash and needed it done fast. He didn't ask many questions, just told me he'd get it arranged by Tuesday evening. I spent the rest of the weekend packing my personal stuff: clothes, tools, photo albums, electronics, anything that belonged to me or that I had before the marriage. I left everything we bought together right where it was. Let her keep it. Let her sit in that house surrounded by the pieces of a life she helped destroy. When Monday came, I acted normal. I smiled at the kids, answered emails from work, played the part of a husband who was just tired from a long week. Claire tried to talk that night. She asked if I wanted to sit down and go over things, maybe talk to someone, maybe start fresh. I told her I wasn't ready, and she said she understood. She didn't. She thought time would make it all fade. She still thought I'd bend. She had no idea I was already halfway gone. Tuesday evening, after she left for her yoga class, Dan and his guys showed up right on time. We had everything loaded in 2 hours. I left a note on the kitchen table. Nothing dramatic, just a straight list of what I took, a reminder that I wasn't disappearing, and a final line that said, "We'll talk through the lawyer." I left my wedding ring beside the note and walked out the door without looking back. That night, I checked into a short-term rental about 20 minutes away. It was a small place, nothing fancy, but clean and quiet. I opened a beer, sat on the worn-out couch, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But that wasn't the end of it. I wasn't done. She'd shattered something in me, and I wasn't going to just let her slip back into her routine like nothing happened. So I called Eli's wife. I found her on Facebook easily enough. Her profile was full of family photos, vacation trips, and the kind of posts that scream normal, happy, safe. I sent a message, just one, polite but clear. I told her who I was, explained what had happened, and attached a zip folder with everything. Screenshots, messages, timestamps, even a copy of the folder of photos. I told her I didn't want anything from her, just thought she deserved to know what her husband had been doing during lunch breaks and after office parties. She read it 3 hours later. She didn't reply. 2 days after that, Claire called me at work, screaming. Eli had been fired. His wife had kicked him out. HR had gotten involved. Apparently, she had printed the emails and marched right into his boss's office. He was under investigation now, and Claire was being questioned too because of the overlap between their personal relationship and company business. She was panicking, sobbing, asking how I could do this to her. I told her she did it to herself. "You had your fun," I said. "Now you can deal with the mess." "You've ruined my life," she cried. "No, Claire," I said calmly. "You ruined mine. I'm just returning the favor." Then I hung up. I turned off my phone, shut my laptop, and left the office for a walk. That was the first day I felt something close to peace. She called me again the next morning. This time, there was no yelling. Her voice was flat, almost robotic, like someone who had been crying for hours and had nothing left. I let it go to voicemail. She called again in the afternoon, then sent a message asking if we could meet somewhere, just to talk, not to argue. I ignored it for a few hours, but eventually I replied and told her we could meet at the park near the library after work. Public, neutral ground. I didn't want to step foot back in the house, and I sure as hell wasn't going to invite her to where I was staying. I got there first and sat on one of the old wooden benches under the covered picnic area, just watching people walk by with their dogs or kids, pretending for a moment like I wasn't about to have the last real conversation of my marriage. She showed up 10 minutes late, dressed like she was going to work even though it was already well past office hours. She looked exhausted, like the last few days had aged her. She didn't sit down right away, just stood there for a second like she was trying to figure out how to approach me. When she finally did sit, she kept her hands folded in her lap and stared straight ahead. "I deserved everything you did," she said, barely above a whisper. I don't have an excuse. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't respond. I just watched her. I wanted to see if she was really here to take responsibility or just soften the blow of what was coming next. "I want to try to fix this," she said. "I know you probably think that's insane, and maybe it is, but I've been thinking about it every second since you left. I don't want to throw away our life." "You already did," I said. "You just didn't expect me to be the one to end it." She nodded slowly, taking the hit without protest. That was new. Before, she would have argued, would have tried to explain or justify. Now she just looked like someone who knew there was no coming back. "I've talked to Eli's wife," she said after a long silence. "She didn't say much, but I think she's going to divorce him. It's a mess. I've been called into 2 meetings with HR already. I might lose my job." "I'm not sorry," I said, still watching her carefully. "You lied to me. You slept with someone else. You tried to act like it didn't count because it was only once. You didn't tell me out of guilt. You told me because I caught you. That matters." "I know," she said, her voice cracking a little. "It matters to me too." "Then why are we here?" I asked. "What exactly are you trying to save?" "Our family," she said quickly. "I know you don't believe me, but I still love you. I made a horrible mistake, and I hate myself for it. But I don't want this to be the end." "You don't get to decide that anymore," I said. "You had your chance to protect what we had, and you chose something else. You chose him. Even if it was just for one night, you made that choice. You can't undo it." She wiped at her eyes, trying not to cry but losing the battle. "I've thought about everything you said. About how I lied, how I made you feel. I've been thinking about what you must have felt reading those messages. I can't imagine how much I hurt you. You have no idea," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Every night, I lay next to you thinking something was wrong with me. I thought I wasn't enough anymore. I blamed myself. And all that time, you were hiding this. I don't think I can ever trust you again." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. That one motion seemed to drain the last bit of hope from her. "So that's it?" she asked quietly. "I don't want to live like this," I said. "I don't want to wake up every morning wondering if you're still hiding something. I don't want to spend the rest of my life with someone who let me carry the weight of their betrayal while pretending everything was normal." "I'll give you whatever you want," she said. "If you want a divorce, I won't fight it. I just needed to see you face to face and say I'm sorry. Not to fix anything. Just because you deserve that." I nodded. I didn't say anything else for a while. We just sat there, 2 people who used to be everything to each other, now reduced to polite strangers. "I'll have my lawyer send over the papers," I said finally. "I'll be fair. I'm not here to ruin you, Claire. But I'm not coming back." She nodded too, wiping her face with the sleeve of her jacket. "I never stopped loving you," she said. "Maybe not," I replied, standing up, "but you stopped respecting me. And that's what ended this." Then I walked away. She didn't call after me. She didn't follow. She just stayed there on the bench, and for the first time since this started, I felt like I was walking towards something instead of running from it. It's strange how quickly life can shift from one version of normal to another. A few weeks ago, my days started with Claire beside me, my kids eating breakfast in the next room, and my biggest concern was getting to work on time. Now I wake up in a 1-bedroom rental that still smells like fresh paint, the living room half-furnished, and the only noise in the morning is the hum of the fridge. I moved out permanently the day after we spoke at the park, told my lawyer to finalize the papers, and asked him to handle the communication from that point forward. Claire signed them without a fight, just like she promised. No screaming matches, no courtroom drama, just 2 people dissolving a life they once believed in. The kids took it better than I expected. Maybe because we didn't involve them in the details, or maybe because they'd already picked up on the distance before it blew up. I sat them down one Saturday morning and explained we wouldn't be living in the same house anymore, told them it wasn't about them and that we both still loved them. My son asked if it was because we didn't like each other anymore, and my daughter asked if she'd still get to see her mom on weekends. I answered honestly, calmly, and promised we'd make it work. Claire and I agreed on shared custody. She would stay in the house for now, and I'd take them every other weekend and 1 night a week. No tension, no passive-aggressive handoffs, just a clear schedule and a promise not to let our issues spill onto them. I don't feel victorious. This wasn't some big win. It wasn't revenge that left me satisfied. Yes, I hit back hard. And yes, I made sure she felt what I felt. But once the dust settled, all I was left with was a quiet apartment, half-filled drawers, and a heavy silence at night. I don't regret what I did. I meant every step of it. But I've realized that exposing someone and walking away doesn't undo what they did to you. It doesn't fix the sleepless nights or the days you walk into the kitchen expecting to hear their voice. It doesn't erase the memories of good times that are now stained by the knowledge of how it ended. People say time heals, but what I've learned is that time doesn't heal, it just moves. It keeps going whether you're ready or not, and all you can do is keep moving with it. I started going to therapy. At first, I thought it was a waste of time, sitting there with some stranger trying to unpack my life like it was a broken appliance that just needed the right tool. But over time, I started seeing the value in saying things out loud, not for advice, not for judgment, just to hear the words leave my own mouth. There's something about naming your pain that makes it feel more manageable. I stopped trying to understand why Claire did what she did. I stopped replaying every moment of the last year like some crime scene I needed to solve. The truth is, it happened. She made a choice. I made one in return. Now we're here. We talk occasionally, only when we have to. She updates me on the kids, lets me know when they're sick or when school events are coming up. We're polite, civil, almost like co-workers managing the same project from different departments. I can tell she's trying to stay neutral, maybe even make up for what she did by being overly helpful. But I keep the conversations short and to the point. I don't need her apologies anymore. I don't need explanations. I don't hate her, but I don't miss her either. That part of me shut off the night I walked away from that park bench. I've reconnected with a few old friends I'd lost touch with. One of them invited me to a small get-together, nothing big, just a group of us from college who hadn't seen each other in years. It was weird being around people who only knew me as the married guy and now had to adjust to the divorced guy version. But nobody pried, and when someone finally asked what happened, I just said we grew apart. No drama, no gossip, just a simple answer that didn't need more. I'm not rushing into anything new. I'm not dating, not putting myself out there. I'm not broken or bitter. I'm just resting, figuring out who I am now without her, without the routine we built, without the future we planned. And honestly, I like the space. I like waking up and not wondering if I'm being lied to. I like coming home to a place that's mine and mine alone. I don't know what's next, and I'm okay with that. For now, I'm just living day to day, focusing on my kids, my job, and getting through each week with a little more peace than the last. If there's one thing I've taken from this, it's that love isn't enough. Respect matters more. Trust matters more. And once that's gone, it's like trying to swim with no ground under you. You can keep flailing for a while, but eventually, you either sink or find a new shore. I chose the shore. I chose me. So yeah, that's it. That's how it ended. Not with a bang, not with a dramatic breakdown, but with a decision. A clear, painful, necessary decision to stop waiting for someone to become who they used to be and start becoming someone I could live with again. Myself.